Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Alex, and today we're going to use all of the clients. We use the RestClient, we use the OAuth 2 client, and that's actually all of the clients, and we use Spring Boot 3. And we will build a small application that is updating YouTube video details so we get that nice effect that you can see down below. It's going to be an exciting tutorial, so without further ado, let's code. Okay, so here's what we want to do. You can see this video that I've uploaded on my channel and it's not listed. So you can't see it unless you know the link up here. Because I'm recording this video right now, I have to use another video as a showcase. So in this video, you can see it's called Let's Code and it has 11 views. And what we will do in this tutorial is we will frequently update the title to reflect the number of views that this video has. And eventually I just change the ID to the video I'm recording right now, and it should all magically work. So let me show you how we actually do this. There's the YouTube API reference, and it's very easy to pull off because we will first get the video details, and that will also expose the views. And then we will update the same video with the new title. So what we will need are two API calls. The first one is video list. And there's a list by video ID. We can see this will give us all the details. And there are two means of credentials. So there's the API key, as you see here, and there's Google OAuth 2.0. So the API key is fine to just list the video, but it's not sufficient to update the video. That requires OAuth. That's why we use OAuth all the way. So actually, let's try this out. If I go here and I copy the ID, let's add this here, statistics. We don't need the API key. And I can hit execute, and that requires us to log in. I just do that, and I just approve that. And we can see down here is the response. I try to make that a little bit bigger. It doesn't work. But we can see the relevant part is that we get the ID back, and there's a snippet. And the snippet contains the title, and that's actually what we're going to update, right? So we go to the update call here. Oh, and by the way, that's going to be important later on. In the list call, you can see it costs 1 unit. So getting a video will cost us 1 unit, and updating a video is the other call that we need to perform. And this will cost us 50 units. So we just keep that in mind for later on. So if we want to update a video, what we have to provide, I can just populate the API Explorer so we can see it. It requires the video ID. Then we also have to, let's check what the documentation says. So it says, provide, we must specify the ID, of course. We also need to specify the title and the category ID. We have to apply that back. So we have the category ID here, and we have the title down here, and we will update both. So the new title will just become available. All right, let's get right into it. We will need the OAuth credentials. So what we do is go here to Google Cloud and create a new project. We call this the Spring OAuth demo. I created in my organization here. I just hit create, and then it's creating. Now I can select the project. It has been selected. And then we go to APIs and services, because we first need to enable access to the YouTube API. So enable API and services. And we search for the YouTube API. That's the data API. We go there and we just enable this. Coffee break. So it has been enabled. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create the credentials. So we select the API, we got that. That's user data, because since the video is unlisted and I need to update it, it belongs to my user. So we go to next. The app name is the Spring OAuth demo. User support email. I just add this one. I don't have a logo. I just enter hello AXGR dev. Continue. I don't add any scopes here. We do this later on. I just hit save and continue. The type is a web application, and we need a new name, Spring OAuth demo. Could do this all day long. We have to provide a redirect URI. So we go, since this is running locally, I just do localhost 8080, and then it's gonna be login OAuth 2 code, and Google is the provider that we're using. Create. So here we can download our credentials. I do this now. And we are done here. So I hit done. Now I downloaded the file to our project. So let's go over to IntelliJ. And if we go to resources, you can see I brought it in here. So these are actual client credentials, and I have to remember to delete them afterwards. So the things that we are interested in are the client ID, which is this one, and also the client secret, which is this one. And since we're using Spring OAuth client, we have to configure those now. Okay, so we add this to our properties. I'm going to use YAML. Let me just do this. Yeah, make this a YAML file. And we can go in there, and I paste this pre-configured properties. So we can see I'm using Spring Security, Auth, Client Registration, and Google. Google is actually a preset that I can use that Spring Security knows. Otherwise, I would have to specify my own provider, including all the URIs that you can find here, the Auth URI, the token URI, all of that. But since that is already known, I don't need to do this. So all we have to do is copy over the client ID, which is this one, and we have to add this here. And then we also need the client secret, which is this one. And I paste this here. So we need the client ID, the client secret, and we need to specify the scope. So I'm going with the default scopes to get access to the profile, and the additional scope, which is this one, Auth YouTube, right? So if we go back to the API description, we can see somewhere that it describes the scope. So this one's needed here, at least one of them, and we're going to use this one. So this is the scope that is needed for us to talk to the YouTube API. So let's actually start the application and see how things are going. Well, that was fast. So let's go to the browser and then go to localhost 8080. So it requires us to select a profile. Oh, do we trust Spring OAuth demo? Yes, of course. I know that's trustworthy. And there's a white label error page, which is expected because I didn't map anything just yet. But we can see that the OAuth flow has just succeeded, right? It recognized our client. We got prompted to select one of the accounts, and then the whole flow has succeeded. So in order to verify this, you don't have to take my word, but it's of course nicer to have something visual. So let's do something. We call this Auth Controller. I make this a REST controller, and this will come in handy later on because we'll change something up. What I want to do is I want to return the name of the currently authenticated user. So this is a get mapping to me. And since all of the endpoints are currently secured, I should always have an authentication object in a security context. So what I can do is security context holder get context. Let me make that a little bit nicer. So context. And then we access the authentication that may be null. So I'm doing a save call and then try to convert this to an OAuth 2 authentication token. I don't have to do this necessarily, but I know that this should be the token that I'm expecting. So we can return auth name. That may be null, in which case we say, okay, it's anonymous. And now let's run this quickly again, because we want to see the username. So I'm going back to Chrome, and let's go to the me endpoint. Oh, we can see I'm still logged in, and you can see, and this is a little bit small probably. So we can see this is the user ID I'm currently using, and we're going to need that later on, because here's the thing. I want to update YouTube in the background. And as long as I'm logged in, the security context has the authentication because it's bound to that request. But as soon as the application is running in the background, because I schedule a job that is updating the video, there's no security context. So we kind of have to get it out of the security context, like this authentication, and still get access to the access token that we need to talk to the YouTube API, which is what we're going to do. So, but for now, I just copy that ID somewhere. Let me go here. I just paste it in here so I don't forget it. We'll come back to this a little bit later. So let me stop the application. Okay, so now we know that OAuth is working, the client is properly configured. We have an access token somewhere. We don't know yet where it is, but I'll show you in a moment. So it's time to talk to the YouTube API. And to save us a little bit of time, I pre-created the models that we're going to use. So let's quickly talk about them. So when we fetch a video, all the things I'm interested are the ID, the title, the views, that's most important actually, and the category because I have to update that. And the API that I'm using is returning a list, right? So even though we're getting the details of a specific video, it's always returned in a list. So I have the video list response. Actually, let's put that here. So the video list response has a list of videos, these ones, and there should, for our purpose, there should only be one video at any time. So this is the read request, and then there's the update request. So when we update a video, we specify the ID, we specify the title, and we specify the category, because these are the things that we have to provide. And down here, I've just mapped out the deserializer and the serializer to map from JSON to objects and vice versa. And I know there are HTTP interfaces, we can use the annotations. So there are multiple ways of doing this, and I don't go into the details here. Just know that these components take care of doing the mapping between components and the JSON. Because it's a little bit tricky, especially here for writing the objects, there's a nested object. So I usually find it easier to just write that myself. Again, you can check the code, you can check the other videos up there where I talk about JSON components. But for now, let's just rest assured that these models will work. So what we can do next is actually take care of the YouTube API. So there's a class that I just call YouTube, and let's map out our API calls. So we make this a service, and there is one function for the details. So it requires the ID of a video, and it will return an optional video, because we might pass in an ID of a video that doesn't exist, so there will be no video, so it's nullable. We need a client to make the calls, and we will use the new REST client, which is this one. Client is the new REST client. So we can see there's an error. That's because there's no REST client in the Spring context. So we have to create it first. So let's create a configuration class. Let's make this a configuration, and it will expose our bean, which is client equals REST client. We ask for a builder here because that's available. This is the REST client builder, and we just do return builder built. So while we are here, we can actually map a few more properties that will come in handy. So let's do data class YouTube properties, and there are a few things that I will use. So the base URL, then the title, because when we update the title, we need a template, right? Because I want to specify a name of the video that says, this is the Spring Boot tutorial using Auth Client, blah, 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 blah. And then this video has X views. So I want to provide a string template that we can format with the actual views later on. So, and I call this a print, let me put this in here, principal string. So you've seen that I just queried the user ID. When we hit the /me endpoint, it returns my user ID for the OAuth authorization token. And this is the ID that we need later on. And just bear with me, I will make this clearer in just a few moments. So these are our configuration properties, and let's make them available under the YouTube name. We have to enable them, enable configuration properties, YouTube properties class. And what we can do now is in the builder, do base URL equals props. Where is it? Oh, I don't have the props here. I also need to inject them. Private, well, props YouTube properties. So I can just specify them here. YouTube props URL. That looks good. Now let's go to the application settings and add the new setup here, like the config. So there's URL, which is Copilot knows best. That's correct, actually. Then the title template is this video has %d views. We're gonna do this. And then the principal, I put this in here already. As I've told you, this is gonna be this one, and it will become clear why we will need this. So for now, this should be enough. Let's also, did I put the video in there? We can also do this. Well, video. So I have the video ID of the video that I will use. So, because it's always the same. And if we go back to Chrome and get the ID, it's this one. back here. This is the ID. This is the ID of the video that we will update. Okay, that was a detour all for just configuring. So how did we get here? All we needed is the REST client, and we configured it with the base URL. So we threw in the properties. So let's go back to YouTube. And again, this is our service to actually get the data. So what we can do now with everything prepared. So this is client. It's a get call. URI, I just do it like this. And we have the path, base path videos, that's correct. And then there are a few query params that we have to specify. Actually, there's just one, it's called part. And then we need to specify the parts that we want to include in the video response. So that's, I have to look it up. It's snippet, content, details, or actually, let's do this. Let's do this some way different. Like I can copy them from here because this is what's required. So I just remove that and have them all in here. That should be it. So I can build the URI. Let's see. So we are, where are we? We are there. And now I can just call retrieve. That's blocking. And the body I expect to be the video list response, right? The video list response, what I just said, is this thingy over here. That's just a wrapper around the actual videos. And it's called items in the API response. So that should be good. So we have the response. Now we have to return something, of course. So I'm returning response in case it exists, items in case they exist, first or null, because we just really expect one. And I think now we're good, right? Yep. So this is the first call to get the details of a specific video. And let's also just implement the update for the video, which is we pass in an existing video and then the title that we want to assign, which is the new title. So I'm just building a request. Request equals a video update request, and that will have the video ID, the title, and the video category, because we need all of them. So again, just to recap, it's one of the modules that I created earlier, the ID, the title, the category, because that's all required to talk to the API. So now we have the request here, and this time it's a put call. So we do put, we build the URI again. So this is path is, it's also video. So I could have made this the base URL of the REST client actually, because it's always the same path, at least for now. But let's go with it. Query param, and again we have to specify the part, and this time it's snippet, status, and localizations. That's correct. Let's build this. Okay, and then we do body is the request now, and then we can call retrieve. Make this a bodiless entity. Actually, we don't. So the API is returning the updated video, but I don't really care about that. So let's just finish things off here. So this is the API connection. We have the REST client here. It's properly configured. It knows how to talk to the API, but there's just one thing missing, because this REST client currently doesn't use any authentication, right? In order to talk to the YouTube API, it needs the access token that it doesn't have. So what would be nice actually now is to have some sort of exchange filter function. So let's check Chrome. There is a GitHub issue that's just requesting that because it doesn't exist on the REST client yet. It used to work for the web client, but unless you are happy to drag in all the reactive libraries, which I'm not, we can't use that for now. So this is an open issue. I linked that below if you're interested. So, but that means we can't use that. We have to figure out another way of making the REST client aware of the access token. So how do we actually do this? And the answer is simple. We're going to use a request interceptor. So I'm just giving it all away. Let's build that. So let's create a new class, and we call this OAuth 2 token provider. And let's do it like this. So this is a component, and it implements the client HTTP request interceptor. And I have to implement the intercept call. Let me just clean things up. So this interceptor allows us to step into the execution of the request, right? So we get the request before it's sent out, then we can send it out and even inspect the response. We don't care about the response at all. So this interceptor now should be able to inject the access token. And the access token is usually in the authorization header of the request, and that then follows the format BIRA, white space, and then the token. So this token provider now should have access to the token that may or may not exist, because I always first have to authenticate for a token to exist. So Spring is storing all the credentials in a repository that we can query. So we can tell us, okay, Spring, for the Google authentication provider, give us the access token for the user with that ID. And it will just return it. So this is what we're going to use. We need a client, and I have to specify this. This is the OAuth authorized client. Let's check if that's correct. Yes, should be. Maybe nullable service. Yep, we need one existing component from the context, which is the, I don't need that here. Let me just make this clean. So we need a service. What is the service? The service is the OAuth 2 authorized client service. Yeah, there's so many of them. Okay, so we have the service, and then we can query the service. We can tell the service to first have to make this available down here. And then we can tell the service to load authorized client. So we know this is always Google because we don't support any other clients at this point. And now we need to provide the authentication name or the principal name, as it says here, right? And this is why we created that property. So let's inject our YouTube properties. And in the props, we have the principal, which is my ID, which I fetched later from our REST client, from our REST controller. So now we have the client, and now we can return, if the client exists, of course, client access token value. So again, that may be null, which is fine. So if we now want to intercept the call, we just read the token from the repository, which may or may not exist. And if the token is not null, we specify request, let me check this, headers. Yeah, and we add the HTTP headers authorization BIRA token. And then of course we have to perform the actual request. So we just return execution execute, and that returns the response over here. If that doesn't work, we just scream and say, okay, no token available. So this is how we read our access token and then stuff it into the request. So now we have to make our REST client aware of it. So let's go back to the config. And here we can now inject, we do it here because we just need it here. Interceptor, which is the, how did I call it? OAuth token provider. And then we just can request interceptor do this. So now our REST client is aware of this. And let's actually, yeah, we could start this, but let's already, before we start this, let's create a job already, because as I said, we want to have this running in the background. So I call this YouTube updater. That's a class. So we make this a component so it gets picked up by Spring. And this one needs a few things. It needs access to the YouTube API. It also needs our properties. Oh, please don't give it all away. Copilot is already giving it away. No. Go away. I want to do this myself. Okay, so we want to have fun update. And we're using the add scheduled annotation. Check my other videos about scheduling jobs in Spring Boot. I want to make this cron. For the time being, we just do it like this every second. So are these 6? Yeah. And let's actually log something so we can see what's going on. Private val log equals logger factory get logger. Yes, that's correct. And then we just do log info updating video. Now we just wrap this in a try and catch block because we might see an exception because of our interceptor, because that might cause the illegal state exception. So we have to catch that somewhere, and I do it here in the background. So the video equals YouTube details. Where's YouTube? Oh, come on. I don't like camel case, as you probably can tell by now. Details and the ID, I just get that from the properties. So that should give us a reference to the video. Yeah, let's actually just lock the video. That's all for now. I catch that already here, cause exception. Yeah, that should be good. So we want this running, not hit the API every second. That's probably not so helpful. So let's actually start this. I think that's a good idea. We start this now. Coffee break. So we can see the application has started. Now let's wait for the job to run for the first time. It doesn't run. And you know why it doesn't run? Because we did not enable scheduling. So let's go back to the config. Enable scheduling. So we try it again. We can see that the application has started, and we can see it fails to update the video because there's no token available, as we would expect, right? So let's go back here and re-authenticate. So that happens silently in the background, as it should. So now we are waiting. It says no token available. That was the last state. And now we can see it happens. It succeeds. Updating video, and here we get the video ID. It has the ID, the title, the views, and the category. Cool. So now our interceptor is getting the token, it's getting the video details. So the final thing that we need to do is update the video. So we go back here. So let's actually do some silly caching, because as you recall, there's a cost to calling the API, which is 1 unit for reading and 50 for updating. And we don't want to update unless we really have to. So make this a mutable variable, views. That's set to 0 initially. And then once we have the video here, we want to make sure if video is not null. And the video views are more than we had stored previously. Nope, we want to first create a title. Again, I provided a template, so use props title and then format with the views. So if you recall our template here, that part will be getting replaced with the actual views. So let's go to the updater. So we call YouTube update props video. No, it's not props video, it's video. It's the actual video. And then it's the title that we just formatted over here. And once that succeeds, we update the views to reflect the current views on the video. So that should really be it. Let's run this. So I'm running the application. It started. Again, I need to first re-authenticate. So the access token is available. That should be done now. So let's see what happens. So we can see the job is running, it's getting the video details, and it should now also update the video. So let's go to this video. It still has the title, let's code. And now let's update this. And then we can see it. This video has 11 views, which is correct as of this time. So now all that is left is deploying the service somewhere, authenticating once so the application has access to the access token, and then just let it run in the background. You could even add notifications for when the token expires, because that may just happen. But I think it's a nice little trick, and it uses the Auth client and the new Spring REST client, which is also nice. As usual, I hope that was useful. Let me know if you have questions or other ideas down in the comments. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.